Hello everybody, I'm the CCG Collector, and this is an unboxing or a mail call or whatever the trendy and popular term for such things is these days. What it really is a set of 3 Star Wars CCG cubes that I purchased, and they got delivered today, and now it's time to see what they are all about. So we've got one for Naboo and Episode 1 themed things. We've got one for Endor and Death Star 2 themed things, and we've got one for Hoth and Hoth themed things, snow and ice themed things. So let's open these up, see what's inside. Now, what is a cube? Why would I want one? Why would I buy one? What is the point of all of this? So, a cube is a way of playing a CCG. I believe it originated with Magic the Gathering, and it's meant to simulate a booster draft. Now, a booster draft is a way to play the game where you build your deck on the fly. You don't come with a pre-constructed deck, you don't collect cards and assemble and search out the best strategies and decks and spend time refining. You buy 3 packs, you open the first pack, take a card, pass it to the person on your right, take the pack from the person on your left, take a card, pass, card, pass, card, pass. And you do that until every player involved has drafted 45 cards. Then you take some basic lands, you take some of the 45 cards that you don't like, and you end up with a slim 40-card deck composed completely of the cards that you drafted over the course of that booster draft from those 3 packs. The benefit to this is a fresh game play experience. It's one where everyone has a shot at the same cards from the same card pool. Actually, open this up here. That's safe. A shot at the same cards from the same card pool. One where you're limited not by your wallet, but by your deck building ability. And that's nice for someone like me who, I don't like that, who, as unusual as it may sound to hear me say this, having just bought 3 full Star Wars CCG cubes, I don't have the money for Magic. I don't have the money to collect. I don't have the money to build decks. I certainly don't have the money to follow the current standard, or whatever they call it, meta. I think it's standard. Type 2 was what it used to be called. Anyway, you can tell I'm dating myself here with Magic the Gathering and how long it's been since I actively played, that I'm still talking about Type 2 decks. But I don't have the money for that, at least not to do it consistently. So what is my alternative? Booster drafts, if they're there. When I do that with friends, I'll play, I'll buy in, and then once we're done, I'll just be able to hand off my cards. They're not, I mean, they are my cards because I paid for them, kind of. You know, I bought into the booster draft, but they're not ones from my own collection. They're not a deck that I crafted over many long hours. It's just something I did, a one-off, and I don't have any real attachment to, so I can let it go. But let's say you don't have a booster box, or you don't want to buy a booster box each time, or you don't think that you have, you don't like the fact that you're going to get a number of junk cards from those booster packs. Maybe you want to cater to a particular theme, or a particular block, or a particular style of gameplay. Well, then you put together something that's called a cube. And a cube is a very large, as you can tell, selection of cards that is intended to simulate a booster draft while making sure that every card in there is one that's useful to someone. It follows a theme. It works well together. You take out a lot of the variability and you can ensure good, consistent, enjoyable gameplay. So that's Magic. What's this? This is Star Wars, right? Same concept, though. And it's even more important, I would argue, in a game like Star Wars, where Star Wars was designed from the start to be incredibly thematic. As early as the second set, A New Hope, you had scenario cards, epic events, where you have a goal to blow up the Death Star, to blow up a planet. With Hoth, the very next set after that, and this particular one, you have target the main generators, and the sights and the sight path and the cards were all designed to simulate an Imperial assault on a rebel base. They have to land here. They have to go through the marker sites one by one. You can't just drop people in next to the base and blow it up. You have to advance like that. And the rules actually, the rules inserts that came with the booster boxes of those sets, of Hoth, of Dagobah, of Cloud City, and so on, would go out of their way to say, hey, here's the theme we want for this set, here are the new mechanics, here's how things are different, and here's how we kind of expect it to be played. With Hoth, that was this Imperial Assault that I mentioned. With Dagobah, now you have Jedi tests. With Cloud City, you've got bounty hunters and enhanced capturing and prisoner rules, and so on. But the problem is Star Wars, the Star Wars CCG is very much a CCG of the 90s. Very complicated, very complex, and necessarily so in order to have that thematic experience, that cinematic experience, rather. And pretty much, at least these days, none of the original sets really have a lot of value in there. Maybe if you're building a deck today, maybe you put in one card from Premier, maybe you put in one card from Hoth, maybe you put in two cards from, I was going to say Dagobah, I don't think anyone puts in any cards from Dagobah, maybe Executor, I don't actually know, maybe some of the bounty hunters. But the point is, because the game marched on, a lot of cards became obsolete, especially with the Episode 1 cards, which Decipher finally started to figure out, hey, here's what makes the game a little bit more fun to play. Here, you can search your deck for certain cards, or you have a starting interrupts or objectives that say, alright, start with these cards in play to ensure a more consistent play experience. None of that stuff was present, obviously, in the first number of sets and expansions. But the result of that is now a good competitive deck is going to be one that uses a lot of the Episode 1 cards, uses a lot of, I had it before, cards from sets like Reflections 3, where, let's see if I can find one, cards like Stormtrooper Garrison. I mean, Power 8, right? Yeah, Power 8. How are you going to pass up on that? Or, I saw Blizzard 4 in here. That's another one. I mean, look at this text. You're not going to find this on really any other card in the game. When deployed, may deploy for free an Imperial Warrior aboard from your reserve deck. Reshuffle. Like, that's unbelievably good, and it's something that very few other cards have, and something that's very absent in the Star Wars game, at least as the cards were originally printed. Now, since then, you've had the Players Committee, which is the ruling body that kind of took over once Decipher lost the license to the game. They tried to keep the game going, and they printed up things called virtual cards. They say, okay, you need to own the physical card, but if you own this card, Walkling or whatever, here's a paper slip you can put on top of it that will give it new game text, that'll make it better and usable. And as a result, now we have some cards that might not have seen play at all, now being worth $20, now being worth $30 or $10 or something. But you also need to be very familiar with the competitive meta. You need to be willing to cut out all those slips and put them in your deck, and have people maybe not know what they say if they're not familiar with virtual cards. And it's something I've never really gotten into myself. I've always liked the original classic real cards, real decks experience. Nothing virtual. But the problem with that, well, the problem with any game that's 25 years out of date now, who are you going to play with? I've got one friend that plays card games with me. We originally started doing that because I knew that he liked the Star Wars CCG, this one right here, and I knew he had a deck or two from back when he collected, in the 90s. I don't think he collected much since then, so he had those cards. But what are you going to do? I mean, you play your one deck, and that's that. It's not like he had a big, ever-expanding and ever-changing card pool. Okay, where are some of these backwards? I wonder if that's... The person who sold me these mentioned that they have these fixed packs of cards, so you can ensure that everyone who drafts has certain locations, has certain things I'll have to check that. Anyway, so he doesn't have... Well, it's Death Star 2, very nice. He doesn't have a lot of variety in his decks, and if I want to play, okay, I have my deck, he has his deck, and we play, and that's that. I've tried to help with that. One idea that I had, especially to, yeah, I mean, these look like locations, but there certainly aren't enough for, more than one player. Unless it's just like a sample fixed pack, and then you have to go through there and find the other ones. But I want to be able to use these cards. I want to be able to capture that experience of doing what this would allow you to do, of fighting on Hoth, or of having something going on in Jabba's palace with the audience chamber and all the different aliens, and playing the game how it was meant to be played at the time it was released. And obviously you're not going to get that these days without a little bit of nudging and encouragement and modification on your own part. So my first thought was, well, maybe we could have dual decks. Two decks that share a theme and are meant to be played against each other. And honestly, my first idea for that was Hoth dual decks. A light side, defend and get everyone off the planet deck, and a dark side, land and target the main generators deck. It never really got too far because I am not a great deck builder, and I don't have a lot of people to playtest with. So that never really got off the ground. But it's a decent idea nonetheless, I think. Another thought that some people had, and apparently was popular for a little bit, I don't know that anyone really knows about it now, are scenario games. You pick a scenario that you're going for, and Middle-earth does this too, I'm sure plenty of other games do. But you pick a scenario that you're going for, and then you score scenario points or challenge points or whatever you want to call them for accomplishing objectives. So maybe if you choose a Tatooine scenario, maybe you have an objective like successfully use a Jawa ion cannon or something like that. Something that you would never build a deck to do otherwise, but if your victory or defeat is based more on how well you achieve certain objectives rather than how much force you had left at the end of the game, that might encourage you to build your deck differently. But I don't think a lot of people pursue that, especially not these days. So the third option is what you're seeing right here, cube play. And this does a couple of things. With dual decks, you're good for one-on-one. With a cube, you see all these cards, and it's not just so that you get different cards every time, but so that you could have a group of 4 people, or I don't know how many cards are in here, but potentially maybe even a group of 8 people, all drafting from the same pool, all with the same team decks. You play against each other. Winner faces winner, loser faces loser. But the decks are still intended to work with each other. They're in the same context. They're in the same environment. And so you get to play a lot of cards that you might not otherwise. Hey, if there's a stormtrooper on Endor, you may do this to him. Well, what if you're not playing against a dark side player who has the Endor cards? Then what do you do? Now that's a junk card. And unfortunately, that fact is what has made the game these days, as far as I can tell, play a lot different than it was intended to when it was first released. So that's what these bring back. And the fact that it's not one, but 3. One for Hoth, one for Endor and Death Star 2, one for Episode 1. I mean, these are... Okay, now these are flipped over the other way. What's going on with that? Anyway, these are themes that would be a ton of fun to explore if you weren't just, I don't want to say net decking, but you weren't just making decks that followed the... Are these all facing the other way now? Yeah, that followed the established meta. Decks that I don't even know what their goal is these days. If it's to... Oh, here's something cool I want to point out. Do I have all... Yeah, I have all 4 of the sabers here. And you can really only see it on Saber 1, the red stripes, which are obviously digitally added by the Decipher guys. I'm pretty sure all 4 of the TIE fighters here have those red stripes, but they're all at goofy angles, so you can't really tell. But look very closely. Oh, focus. Focus. Whatever. There's one right there. You can kind of see it on the wing right there. And if it's not showing up well on the video camera, then... Oh, I know what I can do. There we go. Now we can zoom in. I don't really know from video quality what the significance is of holding a card closer to the camera or changing the lens, but you get what I'm saying. Look up your own Saber TIE Fighters when you are done with this video, and you'll see those little red stripes. So the point is, this is an opportunity to play the game in a varied environment that, zoom this out just a little, that is thematic and produces decks that are, oh, look at all these Admiral's orders, that's great. Decks that are intended to work well in the context of each other. So that's the main reason I jumped at this. There are precious few cube deck lists out there. I mean, I don't know. I built one based on the one that I could find that didn't use any virtual cards. And it's got a ton of Episode 1 cards, a ton of really expensive cards, like, you know, your Emperor Palpatines and all that stuff. Fortunately, you know, it's a cube, you're not collecting, you're playing, so you can use damaged versions of the card or whatever. I mean, I have an Obi-Wan in there that still has some glue from someone who thought it would be cool to put a virtual slip on and glue it to the card rather than just put it in the sleeve, because, you know, that's thinking ahead. Or, you know, I have a card or two that's water damaged in there. It doesn't matter. You can still read the text. So I was able to assemble that. The point is, I have it, but it's going to be a very different gameplay experience than what you're going to get with this. Where, I mean, I don't know, maybe speeder bikes are popular today. I don't think they are. But when are you going to ride on a speeder bike unless you're in an Endor-themed deck against someone else in an Endor-themed deck where you can guarantee, hey, we're going to be on the same planet, going after the same things. So that's really cool. And as I said before, the fact that there are 3 of them is absolutely fantastic. Now, adding on to that, yes, I'm a CCG collector. I collect games. But I collect them to play them. You might be surprised. I have master sets, or I'm shooting for master sets, not play sets, just sets, one of each card, of most of the games I collect. But beyond that, I try not to keep a lot of spares, a lot of bulk, a lot of singles. If I have the cards, I have them so I can play with them. And cubes are a great way to do that, to keep a collection of cards that will maybe are valuable because they're good cards, but are also valuable because, what is this? Oh, Hyperroute Navigation card, nifty. But are also valuable because, you know, they're rare, they're powerful, they're something that a lot of people want. And I pulled out some, I think it was in this one, some AT-ST cannons. That was an example of fairly valuable cards. A lot of the Admiral's orders, I think, are at least a couple bucks each. Death Star 2 is not a cheap card. So that was another reason I bought these 3 cubes, because I mean, I paid a good amount of money for them. But honestly, I think I came out pretty alright, because just the sheer amount of hours that you need to put in to build this, the assembling of the cards, and maybe you buy 3 cards from someone and you pay $1 extra for shipping, or you buy 20 cards from someone and you pay $3 for shipping, or whatever. All those little putsy bits of paying extra all add up. You know, you get your Gold Squadron 1. That's not a cheap card, I imagine. Chewie's AT-ST, all the big cruisers, Home 1, Independence, you know. So the fact that someone else was able to take the time to collect all the cards, to buy all the sleeves, to sleeve them all, to play test them, I mean, that's just, not only am I paying for the valuable cards in here, I don't know if R2 and 3PO are good cards, but they seem like they might be. Oh, let's just for fun. $19.99. This is the Endor version of General Solo. In $19.99, the Endor version of Chewbacca of Kashyyyk, not the Death Star 2 fixed starter set versions. Oh, these are all pointed up, I see. But just the amount of time saved in laboring over deck lists, or not just 1 cube, but 3 cubes, collecting the cards, playing the cards, sleeving the cards, it's just such a weight off my shoulders to know, hey, if I get someone over who wants to play Star Wars, who wants to say, I always thought it would be cool to play with a Hoth theme or to play with an Episode 1 theme. You know what I can say? Let's play. I've got the stuff. Let's play. These are people who don't even need to know how to play the game. They don't need to have their own cards. They don't need any of that. They can just pick it up and go. And that is so worth the money for me. So that's my long talk about, look at that, Ewok catapults. I mean, when are you going to use an Ewok catapult? So that's just my long... These all look like original cards, too, like 1995 blaster rifles and not the fixed set blaster rifles. Rebel Leadership, I think that's an expensive card. I know is definitely an expensive card. Walkling, for sure. So, just to find this, and to find that someone else appreciates non-virtual play with the original themes of the original cards, that's fantastic. So, yeah, that was a very, very long-winded overview of cubes and my reasons for buying these. But let's take a look. Let's go through the cards, in more detail than just flipping through them. Just attack. Yeah, you see, a lot of these are cards that... Not going to focus? No, focus on that little piece of plastic in there. That's what really matters. So, 2 9-creature vehicles with maneuver, and basically this is meant to work with 2 people on speeder bikes, or all these Ewoks. Who's going to use Ewoks in a deck if they don't have to? Lieutenant Grieve, they're Scout Troopers. It is a little bit disappointing, and I understand why. But it's a little bit disappointing for me to see all these Endor-themed cards and not see things like the epic events, like blowing up the bunker, or the epic event of blowing up the Death Star, too. Second Death Star, or any of that. And I get why they're not in there, I think. And now we come back to the concept of... of dual decks, where you can say, hey, this deck, you are going to get the cards you need to accomplish this objective or this epic event. So it is a little disappointing that that's not an option, but I think you still get the thematic experience of playing on Endor or playing on Hoth that you might not otherwise. And that's 2 cubes down. Let's move on to the third one. And this one I'm really interested in, especially, because Episode 1 cards are pretty hard to get a hold of. They're the rarest, the most obscure of the sets. A lot of people at the time didn't really feel the need to get them because they were so different. Like, I don't know, okay, I shouldn't say a lot of people. I, as a collector at, age, gosh, what would I have been then, 12? Didn't feel the need to really go after Episode 1 cards because they all just looked weird, They're, okay, I have Politics of 2. Okay, why do I want a character who's a good senator? When you're 12, you don't want that. You want Darth Vader. And just... Is this another hyper navigation? What's it? Yeah, cool. And it was... we were all pumped about the... We were all pumped about the new movies, of course, at the time, because it was Star Wars, and this was the first time in our lives at that point, a lot of us anyway, that a new Star Wars movie wasn't coming out. Yeah, we kind of had a taste of it with the special editions, and of course, as 8-year-old or 10-year-old kids, you think, oh, it's just the coolest thing in the world. Look, they put in all these CGI creatures, and they covered up the screen with all sorts of junk, and that means that's so cool. And looking back now, it obviously doesn't have the appeal that it did at the time, but now it's funny too. Now that we've had 20 years of prequel Star Wars and games based on it and books based on it and comics based on it and until other marketing and products and all that based on it. Now we get the new sequel trilogy and we kind of look back and go, oh yeah, remember real Star Wars? Remember the AATs? Remember how it used to be? Like, I haven't watched the movies in years, and I'm sure if I went back and watched these prequel movies, I would be incredibly underwhelmed by them. But right now, we must accelerate our plans. I think that's a very popular card. But right now, nostalgia is saying that prequel trilogy was better than the sequel trilogy, and that's all there is to it. So now in hindsight, it's cool seeing all these cards. You may have seen some of my recent videos where I'm going after the Young Jedi card game as well. Episode 1, who cares? It's still Star Wars that I grew up with, Darth Maul with lightsaber, and Darth Maul and Lord Maul. Fantastic. A lot of good cards here. Darth Maul Young Apprentice. Mean looking guy. Such a cool character. And yes, I know they brought him back even though he was cut in half. But it's really a shame that everything was so final in episode 1. Sith Infiltrator. Runheiko, Nute Gunray, Tehao. Yeah, I'm excited about this one. When all this, I don't know about how the rest of you guys are doing, or if when I post this video it'll still even be a concern. But at the time of shooting this, we are still under a pretty severe lockdown, at least where I live, as a result of, that's funny, they're like the same image, just one zoomed in. Pretty severe lockdown as a result of the coronavirus concerns. So I don't know when I'll get out to play with this next. But when I do, this might even be the first one that we play. I mean, I mentioned that the cube that I have already has a lot of episode 1 cards in, but that's because it has a ton of the Jedi in. It has a ton of the Qui-Gons with lightsaber and the Darth Mauls and the Emperor Palpatines and all those. You get what I'm saying. Darth Sidious's. It doesn't have a lot of battle droids, I'll tell you that right now. So this could be a lot of fun to play just for a completely fresh Star Wars gaming experience. Because most of my decks, I talked about how episode 1 cards, I didn't have a lot of them, and I still don't have a lot of them, because I didn't collect them when they came out, and it's pretty pricey to collect them now. So I don't have a lot, and I certainly haven't built any episode 1 decks. But now, maybe I can play with that, and that is the absolute beauty of a cube like this. And one thing I'd like to do, too, the seller didn't have the time to do it, and that's totally understandable. But one thing I'd like to do with these is get the deck lists for these out there. If these really have been play tested and run through a number of development iterations, then they're pretty well good to go. And even if they're not, for some people, these will absolutely provide a great basis to build your own cube with. So I'm going to try to get these deck lists out there. It's going to take some time. I'm in no hurry to do it, but I think it would be really good for the community to have more than one, and maybe I just am bad at finding them, but more than one cube deck list. Non-virtual. I'm sure there are some virtual ones. Look at this. And one thing, I mean, this is just, I'm just happy about, but not only are these all double sleeved, which saves me time and saves me money, but they're all KMC Hypermats, which are my absolute favorite sleeve ever. So that was just a nice, happy coincidence. Look at this. Naboo. Yeah, I think a lot of this is geared around, I mean, while there are destroyer droids, which maybe came from the Coruscant set or something, a lot of these are all Naboo themed. There's the Tatooine one right there. Coruscant one. That's cool. Actually having Gungans. Who ever thought? Can you imagine, 20 years ago, looking ahead into the future going, someday I'm going to say, it's really cool that we have all these Gungans, but, you know, that's life for you. That's how things change. Sorry if I'm under the camera. I'm looking beneath it. Alrighty. Getting through these. And, you know, maybe if I'm late... Oh, Obi-Wan's lightsaber, cool. And maybe if I'm late in assembling deck lists for this, I'm at least showing these off clearly enough. Coruscant, I think that's an expensive card. Maybe... No, the special edition one is. Is this the special edition one? This is. Hey, how about that? Maybe I'm showing these off in enough detail that someone can piece together what the cards are. And if so, then, hey, that's a great benefit as well. Yeah, look at this. Gungans, pilots, Royal Guards. I don't recall seeing a lot of main characters, light side characters like Amidala or any of the Jedi. I saw Obi-Wan's lightsaber. Seen a lot of Gungans. Lane's Republic Cruiser. Alright. Yeah, now I'm just kind of going through these, because I know this video is running a little bit long too. Yeah, where are all the characters here? Maybe I just missed them. Maybe I was talking and didn't see them. Pilots. Yeah, pilots. Okay, here we got a couple of handmaidens. There's Padme, Queen Amidala, same person obviously. Captain Panaka, R2 Brave Little Droid. Is this? I think this is. Yeah, don't bother being in focus. I'm pretty sure this is an alternate image of this card, which is pretty cool. Yeah, it is, because you can see the gold border around there. That's nice. 3PO parts. A lot of Jedi Masters, a couple of Yodas, a couple of Maces, a couple of Obi-Wans. So here are all the cards I was looking for. One thing I am not seeing... Oh, look at that. 4 Qui-Gons in a row. One thing I'm not seeing... The fellow who sold these indicated that there were starter decks, you know, starter packs that you would use to round out your deck with locations or something like that. I'll have to talk to him about that. Maybe they were just in the piles and I didn't see them. I don't know. Like, I didn't... Since they weren't separated out, I didn't realize that that's what they were. And I just felt like a lot of repeated cards. Maybe not, but... Anyway, those are the 3 cubes that I have purchased, and I really intend to play sometime. Maybe not soon, but, I mean, game's not getting any younger. There aren't going to be any more cards out here, so these will last as long as I need it to. 10 years from down the line, who knows? Maybe I'll still be playing these. And if so, then can honestly say at that point that this is an incredibly sound investment. But I'm excited about it. Hopefully this helped all of you out a lot, either learning about Cube Play or learning about the Star Wars CCG or just hearing some of my thoughts, or I don't know. But I hope that you enjoyed this as much as I did. I tell you, I had a great time. So I am the CCG Collector. Thank you all so much for watching, and you all have a great day. Bye-bye.